Again, it's easy to kind of make the cities, and in particular majority Black cities, the boogeyman to kind of fan the flames and fan the fleeing to suburbia. But that doesn't help us as a region, doesn't help us as a state. And again, I believe it's going to cost us as lawmakers like Senator Barfoot continue to push out false propaganda and outright lies about where we are in terms of staffing and manpower that they're absolutely 100% incorrect on, and they know it. And that's the worst part about it.
All righty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy, as always, whenever he has the chance to do so, to welcome in the Mayor of Montgomery, Steven Reed. Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, guys. How about yourself?
You know, can't complain. It's starting to warm up. It's getting in, if we can add another 40 degrees or so onto this temperature, then I'll be happy. Once we get up into the triple digits, I love that. And so we're
you want us to get in the triple digits?
Well, yeah, man. I love
man.
it.
Oh,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, this guy,
better.
I don't even know what to say about this guy.
No way.
Yeah, man. Hotter the better. I mean, listen, I could completely live in a desert climate. I'm okay.
So I was about to say, you're one of these Arizona guys. You want to be out in Phoenix and Tempe and some of those places, and it's 120. You just bake
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, I don't care. Matter of fact, in the middle of the summer, man, when in the afternoon at 2 o'clock or so is when I schedule my runs in the summer. That's when I go running. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I don't know what I know I'm weird. I know I'm weird, but that's okay. If that's the weirdest thing I do, I think I'm okay, which is probably not, but it's all right.
Given what's going on out there, particularly coming out of Washington D.C. these days, there's a whole lot of weird things. So, yeah,
that's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah. All right. Hey, let's get rolling here. And I think we'll start with some of the stuff that a lot of people, have talked about. And that's, the bills that are, never ending, from lawmakers that I wrote about it last week. Will Barfoot's got another one now, that's going to allow the state to take over, policing in Montgomery, apparently, which I don't know why they couldn't, offer support and do other things anyway. But it doesn't make sense when you start to boil it down to me, because, no matter how you look at this, there's a flaw in the problem. Like we just said, you could already go ahead and offer some support and some help, or at the same time, if you're going to say, well, Montgomery's so awful, okay, well, let's compare Montgomery to some of these other cities. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe if we're talking about crime rates and murder rates, Montgomery ranks behind Birmingham and Tuscaloosa and Bessemer and Gadsden and Anniston. And so, why is Montgomery first on the list, here? But this has become an issue, where I think they've painted you as a villain. They have gotten, and I think we all know what some of that is. We're not, we all know what some of that, where some of that comes from. And so, how do you? My fear is that they're having some success in pitching these ideas to the populace of Montgomery, and that it's also hurting Montgomery in terms of image, and in terms of being able to recruit business, and in terms of being able to recruit people, for that matter. When it's a constant, this place is a war zone, you can't walk across the street, and all of the rhetoric that you hear, how do you combat that?
That's a great question. How do you combat it? I think, two things. So policy-wise, and I'll deal with the perception too. I think policy-wise, we offer up legislation that we think will be helpful. And we say, okay, if you want to help this be a safer city, so do I. I don't think Will Barfoot has been held up at gunpoint like I have, running the restaurant. So I don't need Will Barfoot or anybody else lecturing me about crime in the city. And I was far from being mayor in the mid-2000s when that happened. But I don't remember those type of bills coming out at that time under the leadership of Montgomery then. If anything, things were trying to they were kind of hush-hush, right? It was kind of, let's keep it in the family. Let's keep it on the down low. Right. And Now it is, it's doom and gloom everywhere, and let's create this fracas and circus that I think, in some ways, is intentionally meant to sabotage the success Montgomery is having, even at the expense of the region's economic viability. And I think some of these guys want to paint Montgomery as a place where your kids can't learn, where you
Mm-hmm.
can't be safe, and you can't do anything positive. So you need to run to the bedroom communities and the outlying communities and buy a house, drive in, and then drive out.
Right.
Um, so I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is certainly create this hysteria that's driven by the Fox News and other right wing commentators like that want to say all blue cities are just these crime zones,
Right.
and all blue cities, and particularly those led by black mayors,
Yes.
are too dangerous, and you just can't do it. It's not like the good old days, right? When crime never happened, when you
Mm-hmm.
never had a shooting, and you never had anybody running a red light, or never had anybody robbing a bank. Um, so it's this, to juxtapose where we are now versus quote unquote where we used to be mythically in
Mm-hmm.
the past. So this is part and parcel a way to continue that, to say, well, if you don't have enough police officers, well, one, there are a lot of lies that are being spread around by a number of people about how many police officers we have. I'm not going to tell anybody how many police officers we have, because I don't want the bad guys to know how many we have or where they're going to be. Only somebody who's stupid, or who is intentionally hell bent on burning the house while they're inside of it would do that. But they're
Mm-hmm.
out there throwing around fake numbers and just outright lies to prop up their story about why this legislation is needed, as opposed to repealing the permitless carry law that Barfoot and others passed, that other Republican lawmakers would tell you off the record they know was a bad bill. Their sheriff didn't want it then, their DAs didn't want it then, their police chiefs didn't want it then, and the mayors didn't want it then. But
Mm-hmm.
they passed it anyway. And since that time, we've seen gun violence go up. Now, with all that being said, crime has been down year over year the last 3 years. So we're continuing to see violent crime drop. We're continuing to see non-fatal shootings come down. Would we like for it to be zero? Of course we would. Would we like for people to feel like they can go out here no different than they can go for a walk on the beach? Of course. But you got to work with us and work with the city, in particular, the city of Montgomery that you claim to represent. When we present a bill, raise that bill first that brings back some local autonomy around permitless carry. You haven't heard Senator Barfoot mention any of that. You haven't heard anyone else mention that. No one has talked about common sense gun reform, that if it's just in Montgomery, then let us police Montgomery. Because
Mm-hmm.
what Senator Barfoot is proposing has nothing to do with recruiting. It has nothing to do with manpowers. Staffing and manpower. It's all about police contracts. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about power, grabbing who controls what. And it's a play out of this, you know, playbook that's been exhibited in other cities and in some cases other states around this country. If he wanted to help out with recruitment, he'd appropriate dollars to help us pay for these sign-up bonuses that we're taking out of our general fund. He'd appropriate dollars to help us buy new police cars so we don't have to hot seat a car all the time, which is to about $3.3 million. He'd be working on that. He'd also be working to help us appropriate and fund more speed cameras and security cameras. He's not doing any of that. And the worst part about all this, Joshua Davis, that we met for the last 6 months as a delegation. We've had meetings with our entire delegation. This legislation was not brought up one time. Not one time. I learned about it Friday night. Senator Hatcher, I think, learned about it Saturday. So it shows you the type of sneak attack and the type of deception that they're willing to use to try to take over your police department and take power away from the mayor's office right here in Montgomery, as that power has shifted, even despite the success we've had in public safety and in other spaces.
Let me ask you this. given, because you're right. I think, that's what I wrote. Is as much of this is just performative bullshit. I mean, it's call it what it is. It's performative bullshit that you're playing out for the people that you're trying to lure. And he's right now trying to lure the voter, the white people of Elmore County, because that's where his new district is going to be. And so he's playing to those people. And we all know what that dynamic is, right? And so, but what would you say? What would your response be if I said, "Well, how about this? How about you just say, maybe not give it to them, but say, look, you want to help? Come in and help. Come in and help. Let's all get together. What do you want here? How do you want to do this? How do you want to do this? You tell me what your ideas are. I'll tell you what my ideas are. Let's just all have a night. We're willing to help. Manpower. You want to send manpower? Hey, I'm all for it. Give me manpower. Let me know what to do. Tell me where you want to go. We'll set up, but you got to work with our guy. You got to work with Gray Boys over here, who everybody loves. Everybody loves Gray Boys because, I can't imagine why everybody loves Gray Boys, but everybody does. So why can't we all work this out, like that? What is there, could that happen?
David, I would say it's already been happening. I would say it's been happening for about the last year plus, and it was our idea that was floated by the previous police chief, which was Daryl Albert, uh, to combine forces with the sheriff's department as well as the state troopers or ALEA. So the Montgomery Area Crime Suppression Unit, which has been in operation. There's a quack out there that sends out emails all the time to part of his group, saying just the opposite. But it has been working. It was our idea, and it has certainly helped us lower crime. I think get some of the bad guys off the streets. Now, we can't keep them in jail. The lawyers who fund these judges have to do that and keep them in jail, but keep them behind bars. But I would say we are already doing that, and if Senator Barfoot cared to pay attention to the data, not only would he know we're doing it, he would know that it's working, and he would know that he could be supportive through appropriations and funding for this. So then we could put more money into after-school programs, violence prevention programs, and other initiatives that have helped cities from Baltimore across this country halve their homicide rates, drastically reduce their non-fatal shootings, because you're getting people in a space where they have hope and opportunity. But to your point, because of the theatrics that maybe he feels he needs, maybe because of the performative tactics he feels he needs to win this district again, he's dangling out the most basic red meat that's been out there for 6-7 decades now about cities are dangerous. Clutch your pearls, hold on to your purses. You can't go there and get in and get out as quick as you can. And oh, by the way, we're going to block any attempt you have for an occupational tax, which we first raised in 2020 to fund public safety 6 years ago. He was the architect behind that. So, this reeks of hypocrisy and it reeks of BS, as you said, and the people deserve better in Elmore County, in Montgomery County, in Autauga County, and throughout this region to know exactly what it is. We have been working collaboratively with state, with county, and with our federal partners to the tune that's helping us drive down crime and maximizing it. Is our manpower where we want it to be? No. But guess what? Neither is ALEA's. Nobody's talking about the Alabama law enforcement agency is down at least 30% in their manpower. When's the last time you saw a state trooper on the back roads here in Alabama, or even on the main roads here in Alabama? They don't have the manpower they need. So, this is a duplicitous approach to the public and to the legislature to frame Montgomery. And I've said to the business leaders here, let me say something. This is ultimately going to cost us. It's going to cost us because the people you support are out here clanging the pots and pans as if this is the war zone, when every data metric over the last 2.5 years shows you that we're improving the numbers. Yet the fans keep being inflamed by politicians who've been using this as a day-old, attempt to cast those who are quote unquote pro public safety and those who are not. And I don't know anybody who's anti public safety, not one person.
Mr. Mayor, you have, I think you've made a convincing case that politics is a major part of the backdrop here. Maybe it's even the entire backdrop for what's going on. But I also wonder, is it possible that some of this could be due to some real philosophical differences about what constitutes good policing? More of a community based approach that, incorporates social services and so forth, and also police engaging with the community more in non-confrontational ways versus, I think, what has historically been a very punitive approach towards policing.
That's a great question. And, Josh has written about this over the years about our lack of funding, education, and certainly our prioritization on quote unquote law and order and what goes with that. I certainly think that's a part of it that people feel like um, that having more boots on the ground is what's needed. But more important than that, they don't want boots on the ground. They want black men behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be candid about this. And I think that's a problem in today's society when we know that there are ways to address crime in our communities. We know there's a better approach, and we've been investing in that in the city of Montgomery by investing in our parks and recreation department at an unprecedented number, and not at the expense of policing and 911 and fire rescue or any of those things. We put more money in the police department and salaries raises than any administration this century. You can't find one. And that includes their Republican colleagues that have run the city of Montgomery. You can't find one who's put more in it. So, but the narrative, is because the city has a black mayor and is a democratically majority city that it's unsafe and
Mm-hmm.
that you have to have this old school approach, which has not been proven and has actually been disproven, that works to make communities safer. What makes communities safer are opportunities, are reentry programs, or again, hospital intervention programs, making sure that people are taught conflict resolution, but also making sure that those young people who may not have the opportunities my sons have are connected to mentoring and apprenticeship opportunities so that as a young age, they know they can make money without having to commit a crime. They can do that without even having to get a high school diploma. They can get a certification. But we don't invest in that because that's not sexy. That's not, bloody red meat out there for the MAGA base in terms of what they want to see and who Barfoot and others are trying to appease. So for us, we have to do the things as mayors in order to get things done. And we know what the data says. We know, we live it, breathe it, and sleep it and dream it. What makes cities move and what makes them safer? And so is it some of it philosophical? 100%. Or else we would have put many, our ARPA dollars in the building a $1 billion prison. Again, the state would have done more to focus on things that preempt that uh, prison pipeline, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
than just building a super max prison. And what we have to do is continue to focus on those things. And listen, we want to work across the aisle. We have worked across the aisle, from mayors to state leaders, to come up with best practices and to make sure that all our cities are safe, but that young men and young women, young black men and young brown men and young brown women and young black women have the opportunities that are not cut off from them because of their income, because of their zip code, or because of the school that they have to attend. So we're doing all these things holistically to make this city and to make our reach better. I just think there's some people, David, who would rather, quite honestly, undercut and sabotage the success that we have, and quite frankly, lie about it, than acknowledge that we've been successful with the approach that we've had because it doesn't serve their short-term political gains and their political interests.
Hmm. I know that sometimes when you've got a capital city, There is, or maybe even I should say it this way: when you've got sort of these intersecting jurisdictions, you've got, the Montgomery's the capital city. And so you've got this challenge, just like, DC, is another example of this, where you have these sort of intersecting jurisdictions. There can be some challenges, some political challenges and pushbacks and so forth from the competing entities. What I wonder is, where is your, I'm going to just let you know up front, because I live in Huntsville. I'm not really up on, the day-to-day politics of Montgomery. Where is your city council on this? And are they in alignment with your train of thought and with your agenda, or are you also at odds with them when it comes to trying to navigate your way through this?
And the city council overall has been supportive. You've got one or two out there who I think are singing from the MAGA playbook, if you will, but overall, they're supportive of our approach to public safety. They know the recruiting gains that we've had in 2025. They approved our idea to offer signing bonuses of $10,000 to recruit new men and women to law enforcement, to offer that as a career. They approved our recommendation that we give a 15% raise. I mean, listen, our police officers have gotten more raises in the last 6 years under my administration. They got in the previous 20. I mean, so the data and the facts don't match the lies that are being told, and so most of them will acknowledge that. And again, most of our city council has voted to approve our legislative agenda that also includes an occupational tax that would not only help public safety, but Josh, we talked about again on this program, would even help us fund the bailout of a private hospital in Jackson Hospital to address again another shortcoming of the state when it comes to health care. So I guess I'm a little bit um, over, and as Josh kind of put it, the theatrics, when Alabama itself is one of the deadliest states when it comes to gun violence, and yet I don't hear Senator Barfoot or anybody else offering any common sense gun reform initiatives to make the state as a whole safer. And that's from rural Alabama to urban Alabama. So it ain't just Montgomery, Birmingham, and Mobile and Huntsville.
Hey,
That's across the state.
you've got whole damn police departments and sheriff's departments that have been disbanded in this state over the last year, and nobody has raised a finger to do anything in Walker County or down in what was it, Hanceville?
Yeah.
Nothing. The whole they call them their own city council called to them a criminal organization, and nothing, not a finger lifted. Nobody's outraged.
And again, I think that speaks to the hypocrisy, of what we're seeing. And I don't know, we're gonna fight the bill tooth and nail. I mean, we're not gonna go down without a fight on it. But just the fact that you bring it up and it presents itself as an issue, but Barfield, who's an attorney, isn't looking for other opportunities to make the region safer or the state safer, and what makes common sense and himself working across the aisle. That is hypocritical, and we're not hearing any of that from conservative talk radio hosts. We're not hearing that from conservative blogs or other conservative Facebook and social media pages or influencers who are there nothing about what Josh has mentioned and nothing about where Alabama sits as a state overall. So again, it's easy to kind of make the cities, and in particular majority black cities, the boogeyman to kind of fan the flames and fan the fleeing to suburbia. But that doesn't help us as a region, doesn't help us as a state. And again, I believe it's going to cost us as uh, lawmakers like Senator Barfoot continue to push out false propaganda and outright lies about where we are in terms of staffing and manpower that they're absolutely 100% incorrect on, and they know it. And that's the worst part about it.
Mm-hmm. I had a conversation with somebody. It's a business owner, longtime business owner. His family's owned a business in Montgomery for a long time. Yesterday, and we were talking about And he's a practical person. You know, he's a practical person. He understands kind of what's going on, and you know, a member of the chamber, talks about, you know, it talks with all the folks a lot, and you know, when we were talking yesterday, I said, you know, man, what I tend to look at things from a practical standpoint, where if you know, when you tell me certain things are happening, I don't attribute it to this person was born a bad human being, or the color of a person's skin has made them more likely to do X. There's something that has occurred along the way that has led to these issues. And I said, so if, you know, because we were talking about, there was an incident the other day in Montgomery where there was some shots fired back and forth from a car. A police officer hit a car coming out of the pickup at a school in Montgomery. And I said, well, you know, what I think of first is, if you have some individuals who are hanging out of a car, firing weapons back and forth at each other, then anybody, it with even just basic sense, knows that there are only a handful of outcomes out of that. And all of them basically end with those people involved lives being over. You know, for all intents and purposes, no matter what happens, either they're dead for being shot, they kill somebody and they're going to prison for the rest of their lives. They don't kill somebody and only injure some people, and they're going to go to jail for 20 years, you know, for all the reckless endangerment that they've caused. So what has led to this epidemic of young people in Montgomery so undervaluing not only everybody else's lives, but their own to this degree? Can you imagine in your mind undervaluing your life to the point that you would do this on a random Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon and you don't care as much? And so until, I think, we address the issues, the decades and decades of issues that led to that undervaluing of life for those young people, then we're never going to get anywhere. Am I wrong about that?
I think you're right about it. You know, I think um, one of the issues, you know, in Trump's big bill was, you know, cutting out after school programs um, for tax breaks for billionaires. They don't have to worry about programs, David. You know, after school programs, they got billions of dollars. They worry about tax breaks. Um, and so when you start to gut the social services and the programs that help these people, that even churches, as much work as they do, as they live 10 times above their weight class, and other nonprofits, you still have to have government and social service reaching some places, and other people reaching places that, I'm sorry, government cannot reach, to address that young man or that young woman at a very, very early age, to teach them right or wrong, and to teach them how to de-escalate situations, and to teach them conflict resolution, and teach them things that are going to keep them from doing what you just described. And this community has been great at one thing, and that's been cutting the legs out from things that work and then blaming the people who it impacts for the problem.
Isn't that
And
the damn truth? That is,
that,
people don't understand how true that is right there. It is. Oh God, I've railed about this forever. Yeah. The community centers, the youth sports programs, the middle school sports programs. My God, the amount of cuts to those things that kept kids off the street and put a mentor in their lives and connected them with authority figures and police officers on a day-to-day friendly basis. You destroyed the lives of thousands of kids by doing it.
oh, you absolutely do. And, you know, I think what we have to do here is understand we didn't get in it overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. And I think, in particular in today's age of social media, where facts travel faster than the truth can even be explained, those things kind of become reality, both on the good side and on the positive, and on the negative side. And so it's hard to kind of, you know, create that balance for a young person for them to see. Now, the incident I think you're referring to, the facts of it differ from, again, the perception, the Facebook perception, the next door account
Right.
doesn't hold up
Right.
with what we, know. It was a domestic violence incident, unfortunately. Um,
Mm,
and it's something there again that's a result of us being in this, gun carrying society where everybody
mm,
feels like, hey, I've got to have a gun because he or she has a gun. And until we get some reckoning around, that's not what the Second Amendment was meant for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then we're going to have these things happen, whether it's in Huntsville, Alabama, whether it's in Elmore County, or it's in Montgomery or Mobile after Mardi Gras parade, wherever it is. And we've got to make sure, that again, we ask people, okay, what's your solution? Don't give me, the old, hidden, hat trick, right? Tell me what your solution is, Senator X or Representative Y. And yes, let's work with the mayors. Let's work with the League of Municipalities and the city councils. Let's work with the business community. Let's work with the moms out there and the faith leaders. And let's do the things that we believe truly will help make our community safer all across the state. Because again, with Alabama's ranking in about the bottom 5 of gun violence across the state, there's a lot of work for everybody to do, not just
Right.
Montgomery.
mm.
Well,
Mayor,
go
I
ahead.
kind of wonder about, what role the HBCUs can play. You've got a real solid HBCU there in Alabama State. There's some others that are not too far away. Also, I mean, do you, as an HBCU graduate and understanding not only just the rich history of those institutions, but also some of the organizations that tend to come along with those, like fraternities and sororities. Do you see any role for partnerships or innovative, projects that could help to combat some of the the dysfunction and fear that you and Josh were just talking about that tends to plague some of our young people and some of our families?
I think I think there's some role higher ed can play across the board. But I think what we're talking about starts well before higher ed. It starts at a very early age in the home, on the streets, in the neighborhood, in the community. And so, are there some mentor protege type programs that I think work? Yes, to a small subset. Yes, but overall, the community has to decide that they want to give people a chance and not just charity. Charity makes you feel good. If we just being candid, in the Southern Baptist tradition,
Mm-hmm.
it makes us feel good that we're giving some people charity, right? That we're going by the good book, but we're being selective in what we read out of that good book, and we're being very selective about what we implement out of that good book.
Right.
Chance is a little different. So chance is really a lot more than charity. Takes a lot more work, takes a lot more involvement, a lot more sacrifice. And is the ability to show a young person at a very early age that even if your mother, father, uncle, aunt, whoever it may be, caretaker may have made a mistake, they can still get back. They can still make it in a way that you can be proud of and they can be proud of themselves and hold their head high. That comes with, a dignity. I said to somebody recently that the fire department came to us and wanted to raise last year at the last minute for the budget. We didn't approve it. But I said, we'll do a pay study this year. This will be our second pay study and potential raise for the fire department again in 6 years. Asked them when the last time they had one before I came. Um, the second thing was we said we would do the same for police department. But you know what I added on, David, to that? I
What's
said,
that?
we aren't going to give the first responders a raise and not give sanitation a raise.
Mm,
Because
mm,
I don't care if you're picking up trash. I don't care if you're helping keep our city clean. You deserve a raise. You deserve a dignity at work just like anybody else does. And so I want that trash man, that sanitation engineer to have a nice F-150. That's what they want to have. I want them
Mm-hmm.
to be able to live in a nice neighborhood as well. because I
Mm-hmm.
want that young person to say, you know what? I can have a job, a no-collar job, blue-collar job, whatever you want to call it, and I can be successful in what I do without having to turn to the streets or turn to something illegal to take care of myself and my family. Those are chances. Those are things that require some respect. Because I say, you want to see crime go up? Let the sanitation workers not pick up trash for a few days. And you'll see a whole lot of fights break out. You'll see a whole lot of shooting
That's
happen.
right.
So, we got to make sure that from our side, it's not just a HBCU issue, that it is a community and a collective issue. And how do we start giving people chances and opportunity at a much earlier age and illustrating that, as opposed to offering charity at a later age and wanting to pat ourselves on the back for doing something that the good book has told us to do over here, but we ignore what the good book tells us to do over there.
Yeah. Before we let you go, because I know you got to run. I did want to say, there are good things happening in Montgomery. I hear about them all the time. I hear the stories. You don't read them so much, Although listen, might have you a little help on the way for that. But
Good deal. We'll take it.
Yeah, so maybe maybe we can help get some of that good news that's coming. But there have been some economic development wins. There have been other wins around the city. Is that frustrating to have to constantly combat the rhetoric and these narratives out there, and then also not hear from some of the things that you do? And I've heard it from some of the people. What kills me is I hear it from some of the people who are also critics of things, and who are spreading a lot of the rhetoric around, or they'll say, well, listen, but what we did X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, then why don't you talk about X, Y, and Z then a little more? But there have been, right?
Oh, there've been a lot of wins. That was a big, I guess that was the underlying message of my State of the City address, a couple of weeks ago. I know all your viewers watched that, of course.
Of
But
course.
nonetheless, I think that, we talked about the momentum the city has. And it's not just in big projects like Meta expanding here, already announcing their second expansion. It's not just in collaborative efforts working with Governor Ivey to help save and rescue Jackson Hospital, which, by the way, a lot of people who were spreading the rhetoric were in control of Jackson Hospital at the time, and their friends were, and their cronies were. They didn't say anything about it. But now we're in the best financial position the city's been in 30 plus years, and we had to bail it out. It's a lot of irony there. But nonetheless, a lot of great wins. Even our school system still challenged, still running into fierce headwinds, but they've improved their letter grade. And that's traditional schools, our 2-year colleges, working some great dual enrollment programs. But listen, I think the biggest thing I'm probably, encouraged by is our focus on small business and entrepreneurs. We know they're the backbone of the economy. I'm a former small business owner. I'll go back to being a small business owner one day after government life and public service is done. And so we know those mom and pop shops need help. So the grants we've given, the technical assistance we've given them, how to keep your book straight, how to stay on the right side of the tax code. Assuming we still have a tax code, Josh. I don't know. I think this administration is getting rid of that maybe it's just for a certain class of people.
Yeah,
But
certain class,
for those of us who still have to pay our taxes, we are helping, a lot of them. So we've seen that focus, the implementation grow. We're seeing housing being built, that missing middle, that starter home housing that we have been missing for decades. So that will help us with population growth. It'll help us recruit and retain young families. It's going to push our school system and our city government and county government to be more responsive and more innovative. So we are seeing a lot of momentum and a lot of wins that go beyond, I guess, again, just the big, economic development news that makes the headlines, that really flies in the face of the perception and rhetoric. And, guys, I'll say this, and I was hesitating on it, but I'll just say what I saw in a documentary, one of those SEC documentaries. It was about Nolan Richardson and University of Arkansas Razorbacks and his teams that were winning, playing 40 minutes of hell in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he talked about was just how hard it was for a black coach to get success and to be recognized as a winner. And I don't put myself in someone like his shoes because I didn't have to face quite what he had to face given his age and the time he was getting into coaching. But one of the things he talked about was just how tough it was and how hard it was for him to be acknowledged as a great coach, as a great leader, different than some of the white coaches, and different than some of the other ones, and whether or not everybody was really cheering for his Razorbacks, which were majority black, to be successful. And a lot of them weren't. And we realized that they fought through that between the team's talent and perseverance and their resilience, and certainly the coaching acumen that Nolan Richardson had and so many others on the staff. It's kind of similar here. You don't really want to acknowledge what economic climb we've been over the last 6 years. It's been historic. You don't want to acknowledge the financial position we've been in. It's been historic. You don't want to acknowledge a lot of the wins that we made bringing huge brands and having others in the pipeline and the innovation we've done, not just with big business, but with medium and small size businesses, because it doesn't fit the profile, the narrative, and maybe even the stereotype that some have. And so I think for those that are practical, Josh, those that you talked about, they do need to spread that message if they're really cheering for Montgomery. If they're really cheering for our success and not trying to sabotage the progress, they ought to be willing to post those articles and share those things in their civic organizations, in their country club groups, and other organizations as well, in conversations they're having, just like they talk about something that may have happened on one side of town, and that spreads like wildfire in a matter of 15 minutes. So hopefully we still have that civic engagement and the civic support that we had when the coaches may have been a different philosophical bent, David, or maybe even fit a different racial profile, Josh, than what we have right now, because a win is a win, and championships are championships, and that's what we want to bring to the city, and we'll continue to do that. Hopefully we'll get some more people to follow along and to kind of champion those successes while acknowledging some of the challenges to help us talk about the good that's happening in Montgomery and not just the negativity.
Yeah, well, I think we're, I think that definitely needs to happen, and like I said, we're going to see if we can play some role in that as well, and in spreading some of the better things that happen. Is a report everything that happens. That's all I'm saying is a report everything that happens, and I think that we're gonna try to do that. But Mayor, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time, and it's always a pleasure. It's always a good conversation. We love it when you come on, and we're going to have to do it more often. And so if we can be of any assistance, let us know. And but until then, keep the head down and keep working, man. I think you're going.
Hey, we'll do. We appreciate it, Josh. David, appreciate your perspective on what you do. And Josh, again, I agree with your article you wrote the other day. Spot on, and we'll continue to do the work. And we're going to fight this SB 298 and any other legislation. And at the same time, we're going to ask those folks on the other side of the aisle to support us in some other initiatives that we do believe will help make Montgomery safer and more prosperous. And we hope we have that same energy, that same enthusiasm, and that same commitment to help us with the legislation that the city council, David, did vote by resolution to pass, and we did sign off on as our legislative agenda, as we have this one that was brought out of left field. So we'll see if the same energy and enthusiasm and the same intensity meets us for those pieces of legislation as this one has that we didn't ask for.
Right. Well, listen, thank you. Thank you for the work, and thanks for spending the time with us. We do appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys. Take care now.
All right, take it
That
easy.
is Mayor Steven Reed. Always a pleasure. Hey, we're going to slide out. We'll come back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week. We're back in a moment.